Please listen carefully. Please listen carefully.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Ray of Life Radio. This week we've got a special guest with us in the studio, Judson Caldwell, owner of Caldwell and Cowan Funeral Home here in Covington, and also our sponsor for this program. We're going to have him in the conversation today on life, death, grief, and bereavement, and we're just going to talk about a little bit of everything. So welcome, Judson. I'm glad you're here with us. We hope to have a good conversation today. Remember that you can call in and join us in the conversation by phone at 678-212-0310, or you can email us at rayofliferadio@gmail.com. You can Facebook us at facebook.com/rayofliferadio or Twitter at rayofliferadio. So let's go ahead and get started. Judson, I know that your family has been in the business, funeral business here in Newton County for quite a while. Can you tell me a little bit about the history of Caldwell and Cowan Funeral Home?
I certainly can. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you. My grandfather started in funeral service in Gay, Georgia in 1920.
Wow.
And in 1930, he moved to Newton County and began work with Mr. R.E. Everett.
Okay.
Following an illness that they did not think my grandfather would survive, he found out that he was unemployed, and at that point he decided that he would try to begin his own funeral home.
Okay.
And did so in 1933 in Porterdale.
Oh, okay. So it sounds like he kind of had to take a leap of faith.
A tremendous leap of faith, starting from nothing and just trusting in his faith and the good Lord that things would work.
Wow. Now, I know from watching some history shows, a lot of times funeral homes started in the back of furniture shops. Is that the way he started as well?
Not here in Covington, but in Gay, Georgia, he did. He was tied with a furniture store and actually built furniture, and they built their own coffins in Gay, Georgia.
Wow. I know he was a very talented furniture designer as well, because there's some of his stuff that we've still got in the house.
That's correct. He was a very talented but non-trained woodworker and carver, and actually even carved a bust of Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Wow.
And carried it to Warm Springs and presented it to him later.
Wow. Wow. I wonder if that's on display. I've never been down to Warm Springs. That would be interesting to find out.
It would be. I have never been there either.
Wow. Well, given the history within Newton County, I know that you're third generation in the business, and each generation usually has its own motivations for getting into a business that is a service business like this. What are some of your motivations? Why do you do what you do?
Basically, as to be able to help people. In all honesty, when I graduated from college, I did not anticipate going into funeral service.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of things that fell together that were not humanly possible to all happen, but they did. And I wound up in the military after college working at the U.S. Army Mortuary at Tonsanute Air Base.
Oh, wow.
And that is where I actually decided that I would make an effort to come back to Covington and see if being in funeral service in my hometown would fit.
Wow. I'm sure getting an introduction to the funeral service through a mortuary in Vietnam was rather trying.
Extremely difficult. A lot of casualties that were there. Just so many different situations with which you had to deal, and trying to do the best you could to make everything as presentable whenever possible for the family that had lost their loved one back in the States.
Right. Well, I definitely thank you for your service. I thank all of the men and women that have served through Vietnam, through Korea, through World War I and II, all down through history. And I know that it's because of the sacrifice of our men and women in the armed forces that we have freedom today, and I thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I do know that you take great pride in serving veterans as well.
We do. We believe that no matter whether an individual is a veteran or not, that family and their loved one deserves the best care and all the respect and dignity that we can provide them. Through my military career, which was only 2 years, but sometimes seems longer, and what I have learned here, not only is a sacrifice made by the veteran, and a lot of those wounds that a veteran has may be visible, some may not be visible, but at any rate, they deserve all the respect and dignity that we can provide them.
Yes, sir.
But the family also makes a sacrifice.
Yes, sir.
Because the family is without their loved one. They have the worry of where that person is, what are they doing, are they safe, are they in danger? So there's a sacrifice that's made on both sides.
Right, and that's true.
With the freedoms that they have provided for us, I would not be comfortable doing any less than we do to honor a veteran's service if
Yes.
that's what the family allows us to do.
Wow, and that's good. That's commendable and greatly appreciated, I know, by a number of families that have been served by Caldwell and Cowan. Now, I know, we work with grievers weekly, almost daily, and in dealing with them for the last few years, I've heard many of them say that they wish they had known more when they first walked into the funeral home for the first time. Because there's a lot that has to be done, and people don't really realize what has to be done. As a funeral home professional, what are a couple of things that you could maybe tell people to better prepare them for that eventuality?
Well, one of the things is to take the time and go to a funeral home that you wish to use and ask them for anything that they have that they can provide to you that will allow you to put down private information
Okay.
that is needed for completing a death certificate. Just as an example, you always need the parent's name of the deceased.
Wow.
And if there are no children that may be surviving, or it's a family that only has one child and that's the person that's passed away, and it comes down to grandchildren, sometimes they come in and they say, all I know is grandmother and grandfather, or papa or nanny, or
Wow.
whatever you tend to call that individual, but they don't know their maiden name, and that's one of the things that you need.
Wow.
But cities and state of birth, social security number, veterans branch of service, sometimes they know, sometimes they don't. A lot of veterans that serve have a tendency not to talk about their service.
Yes, sir.
And that's one of the things that I encourage families to do while everybody is still together. Talk with each other, make notes, put things down in black and white so that this family will know what that veteran wants to have done, or that family member wants to have done at the time that services, either cremation or funeral services, need to be rendered.
That's a great idea. So planning ahead, basically.
Absolutely. Planning ahead. You can even go to the extent, if you're comfortable doing it, selecting casket, vault, everything that you want done, where the service is to be, minister, pallbearers you prefer, if they are still able to do that at the time that they're needed. Everything can be specified basically in black and white except the day and time.
Wow. So it is very possible for someone to have everything planned out so their family has little to be concerned with.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's impressive, and I would definitely encourage families to take advantage of that process, because it can be, you're going through one of the toughest times in your life, and questions and needs are being thrown at you left and right, and I'm sure it can become rather mind-numbing.
It can, and also as I have experienced in my own life, even though you may be ready, and due to the illness a person may be having, you think you're ready for that person to go ahead and pass away. When that reality comes, you find out that's not necessarily so.
Right.
And you don't think clearly. You sort of, one of the things that the body has to protect itself when you're dealing with shock is your mind just doesn't function as it normally does.
That's right.
And there are things that you may hear, but you don't actually comprehend.
Yes.
So I think it's essential, and it's not unusual for families not to be able to make decisions at that time, especially if the death has occurred suddenly.
I can imagine. I do know that it is important to be able to, what's the word I'm grasping for here? I can't really think of it right at the moment, but I do know that there is some importance in that and being able to do exactly as you said. Well, I tell you what, we're going to go back to the music, and we're going to take a little break here, go back to the music, and then we're going to be back with our special guest, Judson Caldwell from Caldwell and Cowan Funeral Home, our sponsor for this program. So we are very glad that he is here, seeing what we do every Friday. Again, you can join the conversation by phone. Call in at 678-212-0310. We will be here until about 10 minutes to 1, and that's when the radio station takes back over from us. Or you can email us, rayofliferadio@gmail.com, facebook.com/rayofliferadio, or at Ray of Life Radio on Twitter. Here's the next song coming to you. It's called Ain't No Grave by David Crowder.
It's been stop.
Welcome back this Friday afternoon to Ray of Life Radio on WGFS AM 1430 in Covington, Georgia. You're joining us in studio today with Judson Caldwell, owner of Caldwell and Cowan Funeral Home in Covington, Georgia, and sponsor of our program. I thank him for coming and joining the conversation. And we're actually going to have another question kind of about his funeral, his funeral business and what motivates him and some things like that. But we're going to get into our specific topic today on the art of listening. Listening is an important skill that we need to make sure that we have, especially when people around us are grieving. But we're going to get back to asking some questions of Mr. Caldwell. Now, last time I counted, and why I would know this, I have no idea, but there are about 5 local funeral homes, if I count correctly, in the area, but each one tends to serve different parts of the population. However, there is some overlap between different types of population that are served. What sets you apart from your competition?
We, in particular, try to listen to what our families tell us and to basically make every celebration of life unique to that individual based on what the family is requesting. Sometimes they have difficulty in expressing that, and that's sort of where we as funeral directors or funeral arrangers need to listen between the lines.
Very good.
And enter into a dialogue with that family to be sure that we are understanding what they are saying to us. Mm-hmm. So that everything can tie together to be the type of service that they wish to have. We will serve any family, does not matter race, religion. We will serve any family that requests us. What I see when we have a grieving family come through the door is a family that needs our assistance to do what they want done, and the manner in which they want to do it, and that's what we strive for. Because any family that comes through that door is grieving and they're hurting.
And I mean, you just said it right there that you have to listen.
Absolutely.
You have to listen between the lines, I think is what you said exactly. And that's so true because grievers are going through a challenging time, and like you said previously, some of our protection that God provides us is this period of numbness, I guess you could say, so we're not flooded with every emotion we could possibly have. So listening really works well in your line of work and understanding how to listen to those that are coming in. Listening involves different steps, and I think a lot of times if we've never dealt with death in our lives, we don't really understand how listening works when it comes to working with a griever or talking with a griever, because listening works based on 3 different parts, really. The first part's receiving. Being able to receive the information the person is giving you in a way that allows you to repeat that back to them so that they know they've been understood. Is that right?
That's correct.
So I'm assuming during the arrangement process, you're listening. You're listening for clues that they're giving you about this person, about what this person desired, and you're working to try to be able to feed that back to them in a way that they know they've been listened to.
And you want to also be able to glean information that they are telling you about their loved one that helps you to create a service that is unique to that individual.
Right. And that's good. I know that's, we've been so accustomed to the standard 23rd Psalm type of funeral, and I'm really excited about some of the funerals that are being done that are true celebrations of the person's life.
Yes.
And as we talk about death, and as we've talked in previous shows, it's important to remember that loved one. And what better way to remember them than remembering them during the funeral in front of their friends and family?
Absolutely. And one of the things that I have seen evolve since I started here in 1972 is everything with the service used to be music or the minister. Or the selected speaker. Now, services are opening up more and more to comments from family, friends, a memory that can be shared, something that is memorable. And I think it's very important to also take into account that a person's life is not always somber.
Right.
It's, I think, important to have appropriate humor. That if that was important to that person and there's something that is funny that would make the family and friends laugh, that's uplifting, you're remembering them in a positive light.
Yes.
Which is very, very important. Because what you want to do is feel better when you leave that service than when you came into that service.
And that's so important to remember. I know I've done a few funeral homes, a few funerals at your funeral home, and I know that every time I sit and talk with families to get stories of loved ones, they always start talking these funny stories.
Yeah.
And they want me to incorporate that in the funeral because they know that was the personality of their loved one. Their personality, the loved one's personality wasn't necessarily just all stiff and rigid. They were much more than that. And I think being able to celebrate that is vitally important to the grieving process as a whole.
It is, and it also enables one other important factor that comes to mind, that the family will know this individual, but friends of the family may not.
Right.
And through that service, I think it's important that the family's friends learn and know about that individual and know more about them than they did when they came.
Right. And I know when we start talking about, doing a unique or customized funeral, just a couple that I know of, I know that there was one where the family either came in or left to Kool and the Gang celebrate.
It came in.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, that's definitely not somber. And there was another where you actually had a motorcycle or golf cart in the funeral home as well for, to represent their love of those particular things.
Both. We had different individuals, but had both in the funeral home.
Wow.
And another one that comes to mind is an avid fisherman. We even had a bass boat.
Wow.
We couldn't quite get it in the chapel, but where the service was, but it was parked outside, and it was a high point and a highlight for everybody to see as they came and they left.
That's how they identified that person, by those hobbies. And I think that is so amazing that families are starting to do that, because that's very important. Now, another aspect of listening is interpreting. Being able to take what we've received, interpret that in a way that we can respond back to the person talking with us so that they understand they've been listened to or understood. And it helps us also to decipher whether we are misunderstanding the person, whether we are understanding them correctly or whether we have misunderstood them. And interpreting, it sounds like sometimes you have to do that as well.
We do, and the best way to be sure that you are interpreting correctly is to be sure that you have a conversation with the individual that is giving you that information, because sometimes at that point in a person's life, they have difficulty in expressing what they're trying to say accurately.
Right.
And this is a situation in which we only have one opportunity to be sure that things are done correctly.
Right.
So we want to be sure that we understand what is expected of us.
Right.
So that we can accomplish what they want to accomplish in honoring their loved one's life. And
that's so true. Because if you do misunderstand, that can really set for a bad experience.
It's once, if you don't understand, you start down a path that it's hard to correct back and get where you need to be for the benefit of that family to go through the grieving process and get on the other side of their grief and cope and get back to as normal a life as they can without that loved one.
And that's the thing. A lot of times we say you're going to get back to some semblance of normal, but you're not going to have the normal you had before they died.
That's correct.
You're going to reach that new normal. And I know new normal has been picked up and used in all sorts of different ways. Another that I completely forgot about, another specialized or I guess I hate to call it a designer funeral, but one that was really customized for the personality of the loved one was my father-in-law. The Tennessee stuff that we had up there, yes, he was a Tennessee fan, and some of the funeral directors were not happy about wearing orange ties that day, but they went through that process. And having the varsity in the cemetery, which I think was a first for the cemetery.
It was, and for the funeral home.
But the varsity truck came, and the people that came to the funeral got free food, and that was amazing. And I think people driving by on I-20 were really shocked to see the varsity truck out there serving food in the cemetery. So
Absolutely.
And that's the thing, is listening helps us better serve the griever overall. You more specifically at the most pressing and urgent point at the very beginning, and then us as grief counselors or grief facilitators in the aftermath of going through that, because we see them after the numbness is wearing off as well. And it's important, and I am so glad that the funeral home Caldwell and Cowan does this, is provides lasting aftercare for families, so that it's not just a service, get a check, it's over. We check in with families. We invite them to grief facilitation groups. They have a connection with us far beyond the date of that funeral.
That's correct. And I guess as someone who fully believes in aftercare and trying to help someone through the grieving process, the most underlying frustrating point for me is there are people that need help but won't admit that they do.
Right.
It's not a sign of weakness to me, it's a sign of strength.
Right.
Because they know they need help, they recognize it, they're willing to reach out.
Right.
And receive the knowledge that they need to realize that what they're experiencing is not something that's unique. Everybody goes through the grieving process, and especially one of the things that has really been impressed on me in my career is that there is no specific timeline
Yes.
for grief to be over.
That's exactly true.
And that's, I think, where a lot of people feel like, well, somebody has been gone for so many months, you should be better.
Right.
That's not necessarily so.
Right. And that all comes back to our culture. Our culture has tried to teach us that, grief needs to be over with and done with, and you need to get back to work. 3 bereavement days is the norm, I believe, now. And some companies, I don't think, even provide that. So everybody thinks that when there's a loss or death, that you have to pop right back into work and be your normal self. And that's not at all the case.
Very true.
We have to process through what we're feeling. And, one thing that we're trying to accomplish with Ray of Life Radio is to raise community awareness about grief and bereavement, because there are a lot of people who don't really acknowledge that they need help. And if they think that if they say they need help, they'll wind up at a psychiatrist or psychologist's office and they'll be labeled as depressed or something. But, we try to work through it as a ministry. We try to reach the people where they are and just be able to talk to them in a way that they are able to draw comfort and they're able to walk through their grief without somebody pushing them, trying to get to the other side too badly. So, but yeah, definitely, I greatly appreciate the ability to be able to do that on a daily basis. We're going to go back to the music again for a brief moment. I do have to apologize. The previous song I played was Ain't No Grave, and it was by Bo Bice. Bo, when I see you, I know you're going to get me. But Bo goes to East Ridge Community Church, Jackson Lake campus, a very, very active local gentleman and a very good musician as well. And I apologize for mislabeling that song. That was Ain't No Grave by Bo Bice. We're going to go back to the music. It's No One Higher, The Stand, song that comes out of North Point Church up in Atlanta. But remember, you can join the conversation today by calling in 678-212-0310 and join us here on 1430 AM in Covington, Georgia.
No one greater, no one like our God. There is none more able.
Christ our Savior, great and glorious.
Afternoon. We are back on Ray of Life Radio at WGFS 1430 AM in Covington, Georgia. We've got a special guest in our studio, Judson Caldwell from Caldwell and Cowan Funeral Home, sponsor of Ray of Life Radio. I just want to thank him for coming by today and join us in the conversation. I think that we've put a lot of good information out there so that our listeners better understand a little bit about the process involved in making funeral arrangements, but we've also talked a little bit about listening and listening to those that are grieving around us. And we've talked about the first two steps of receiving the message and evaluating the message, interpreting the message. And the last step in listening is evaluating. We take what's been received, we take what's been interpreted, and we decide how to proceed with that information. And that's vitally important to what you do, because, as you said, you've only got one chance to get it right.
That's correct. One of the things that we try to do is go over everything that will be done with the service to be sure that it is being done as the family wishes it to flow from beginning to end.
Yeah.
And it's important that they likewise listen to us, and if it's not exactly what they want, they can say, no, don't want to do this, we want to do something else.
Right.
And then we go that direction to make sure we can do our best to put it together in that capacity.
Right. I think so many people have this misunderstanding that it is a dictated process where the funeral director guides everything and says this is how it's going to be, but it's actually becoming more of a family-directed process, isn't it?
It should be family-directed. We can guide in what we do, but we should only guide after we have received the information from the family.
Wow, yes.
And then they can say, yes, this is what we want. No, this is not what we want. And we keep working at that process until we accomplish what they want.
Right.
The service, whether it's traditional burial or a cremation service, is for them and the members of their families. It's not for us. It needs to be unique to them and for them so that it will be something that will be a positive remembrance of their loved one.
Yes, and that's so important to make sure we do that, because a lot of times you have to receive and interpret that information even in spite of your own personal experiences, and be able to be non-judgmental in what they want to put together what they really desire.
It's very important that I think any funeral director be non-judgmental, because no matter what situations you may find yourself in, you're going to have the two sides.
Right.
And generally, as I have found out over the years, the truth generally comes down somewhere between the two sides. One side is not all right, the other one is not all wrong.
Right.
It's a combination that works its way down.
Right.
But we don't judge. We're there to provide services requested with all the dignity and respect that we can give the family's loved one and the family.
Right, definitely. I think it's also to point out, or to make sure everybody understands, that sometimes listening involves us just sitting back and being quiet.
Absolutely.
A lot of times we tend to want to jump ahead of the person that's speaking to us, and if we do that, a lot of times we're putting our own agenda into the process, and that's that you can't do that with funeral.
No.
Not at all. So it's very important that you do have to remain sort of neutral and listen and have in mind exactly what you know you can do as a funeral director, but being able to grant their wishes as much as possible, which I think is a very very nice thing to have happen. And not letting your personal experiences weigh into it as well. There are times, I'm sure, where families are trying to work their way through the process, and you just get the sense they have more to say than they're really saying.
That's true.
And
you can encourage them to, if there's something else that they would like to say or they need to say, to please go ahead and say it. So if it's something that we need to be aware of,
right,
and that we can put into what we do,
right,
we need to have that information. But sometimes that doesn't happen.
Right.
Every individual is different. Some are more willing to share than others. So it's an individual basis, but we do our best to get all the information that we can from a family that they are comfortable disclosing to us,
right,
without prying.
Right. And that's another thing too, is being able to ask those open-ended questions to encourage them to open up more. You could go through the arrangement process and ask a lot of yes-no questions, but that accomplishes really nothing other than a selection process.
It just gives you the specific information to that question, but not any additional information that may be very helpful in making their service unique.
Same thing goes with us dealing with grievers in general. A lot of times we just have to learn to either sit and be quiet and let that silence work for them to develop what they want to say, or to even be able just to simply ask them that open-ended question, tell me more about that, or I'm interested in learning more about that. And I think taking that opportunity to let them know that you truly want to hear what they have to say can help the process overall.
Absolutely.
And like with grief, it's very important to encourage conversation about the loved one, and sometimes the only way that's accomplished is by a lot of tell me more about that, or open-ended questions. We have a grief dog that we also use, Jovi. She goes to our local Newton County theme school and reads with some second and third grade classes there. They love her to death, but she's also available for our grief groups, and I have seen her presence open up someone who refused to talk. And it's amazing how that works. Animals are very loving, and they're very in tune to what humans are going through. And I think she very well picks up on that and has really helped the process in many ways. I am thankful that you saw the brilliance of that idea. No, I'm not saying I was brilliant. No, that's a good idea that had actually been started around the United States, using therapy dogs for the funeral business. And, we took a leap of faith in that as well. We didn't know how it would work, but she's really helped our grievers, and she's also helped some children locally with reading therapy, which I think is a big way to give back to the community as well. And I think that's one thing that Caldwell and Cowan has never failed in, is giving back to the local community.
We have always tried to do different things to give back to the community. We want to be a part of the community that supports the community in different activities. We don't want to be just there for a specific purpose in what we provide for a family. We want to reach out and do things that are different and be involved.
Right. And that's important, because you can't really service a community unless you understand the community somewhat.
That is very correct.
So, things like sponsoring our radio show, Ray of Life Radio, or even, allowing the aftercare program to continue to provide grief facilitation to anybody in the county, no matter what funeral home they used. I think that's vitally important, because this is truly a ministry. It's free of charge to anyone who needs to use it. And we have grief meetings every week, Thursday night, 6 o'clock at Caldwell and Cowan on Floyd Street. The only Thursday we don't meet is the 5th Thursday of the month. And, if I can encourage anyone, it's to be able to take that first step, to come and sit in a group and really let others help you through the process. Walk with other people, so you're not trying to do it by yourself. And as we've said previously, you can't do this by yourself. You have to draw on the strength of Christ. You have to draw on His healing power to work through you during this process, because without Him you will be unable to accomplish it. I firmly believe that He's given us the numbness, like Judson said earlier, to protect us. He feeds us parts of our grief in small amounts, because if we were to take it all at once, we would become vitally overwhelmed. And I think it's very important that we remember that in all we do as well. Adding back to what we've talked about a little bit more previously, what could you say as a local business owner and as someone that served the community since, goodness, for decades now? What could you say to the community about what you do and about their process through this?
It's an honor for us to serve any family that requests us. We feel like each family, regardless of circumstances, is just as important to this community as anyone else. And some individuals may be more successful than others. Some may have a harder time with health through life issues. None of us are promised tomorrow. None of us are promised that everything is going to be just wonderful.
Right.
But we are honored to serve each family that comes through our doors, and we'll do it to the best of our ability, and we'll do our best to provide what they want and the manner in which they want that to be done.
Right.
It's hard for a family to come through our doors before they have experienced a loss to try to get a head start on getting some things done. And we realize that.
Right.
And it's one of those things that, as I look back over the years, there but for the grace of God go I.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
it's just very important that we reach out to each family that we can.
Right. Now, I know that you do have resources that are available to families who are trying to do some of this planning ahead of time. Is that correct?
We do. We have information that can be given to them. They don't have to sit down with us. They can come in, they can pick it up, they can take it with them, work on it as they feel they can.
Right.
And we just would like to have just a moment to make them familiar with what is required.
Right.
And then they can take it with them without any obligation.
Yeah. And I do know that, everything that is needed from the way of death certificates and insurance filing and all that is provided through your office.
That's correct.
And that's amazing to be able to offer that to your clients. I think that's vitally important for everyone to realize, is that you do everything you can to make the process as easy as possible on the families you serve.
That's what I feel like we need to do to be of full service business to them.
Right. Well, I've enjoyed having you here today. I've enjoyed talking with you about what you do, about what we do here on Ray of Life Radio, and about how we do offer that to serve the community as well. And I am honored for you to be visiting with us today. And again, thank you for your service. I know that there are many times where people who served in Vietnam were not treated fairly when they came home. And I think that is a degrading time in our history. And I greatly thank anyone who served during that process, as well as any other time of conflict or even peacetime that we may have experienced in our history. And, I just want to say thank you again for that. And any of the veterans that are listening today, thank you for your service. Ray of Life Radio on WGFS AM 1430 in Covington, Georgia. We have wrapped up another Friday in our studio talking with Judson Caldwell, owner of Caldwell and Cowan Funeral Home and sponsor of our Ray of Life Radio program. Remember, though, that even though we are taking a week before our next conversation, the conversation does not die here. You can continue to email us at rayofliferadio@gmail.com. You can reach us through Facebook, facebook.com/rayofliferadio, or Twitter @rayofliferadio. Feel free to send us questions. If we get questions during the week, we'll be glad to answer those on the air on Friday. We'll be back next Friday from noon to 1 and hope to have another special guest in the studio talking with us. Now, we're going to go to one last song that's going to allow us to transfer everything back over to the radio station. Again, thank you, Ray of Life Radio, WGFS AM 1430 in Covington. And here's a little old one, I Saw the Light.
All right, so here we go. One more chance for a little group singing with Shane and the Robbie C. Band. All right, this little song called I Saw the Light.